So this is Todd Mays, and Todd lives in Cascade. And so tell us a little bit about your background. I know you've been a firefighter, and we thank you for your service.
Yeah. Oh boy, that's not. Hold it down here. Okay. Yeah, I was a firefighter for 10, 12 years. Got started late, doing other things, and then I got into firefighting really after 9/11. 9/11 kind of, like a lot of people, got me thinking about other things besides the grass is always greener on the other side of the fence. So I got into that and went and did that for a while, and then you want to go into the...
Well, let me just point out, actually, and Todd's wife is with us, and she's a firefighter also, so thank you both for this. It's incredible. But firefighting is, I think we all kind of intuitively know that that's hard and demanding work, but it's physically challenging work, and you and your wife have had some health challenges just from consequences of the firefighting work you've done.
True. Yeah, I ruptured, well, I had all kinds of injuries, but basically one of the ones that got me started was I ruptured a disc in my back in 2009. Had a ruptured disc, it blew out, had a laminectomy. Took a season off and made it back to work. And then that year, my wife blew 2 of her discs out. Unfortunately, hers was up in her neck. And because of the work that we do, she was advised not to. Mine was down in the L4, L5. So when mine was repaired, I made it back to work until 2013.
Yeah, so in 2013, your life changed. What happened?
I thought I was having a reoccurrence of the old injury. I was dealing with a lot of pain constantly. I was getting massages and therapy and taking all the pills and doing everything I could, and the pain never stopped. I went to a chiropractor, and he was doing some work on my back and pushed an area in my back, and I just fire shot through my whole body. Like, oh my God, that's not good. So I ended up coming to see our Dr. Curtin. Where is she? Dr. Curtin. Hi. Thank you. You're a blessing. It was actually her assistant that day got me into an MRI, and we found out that there was black spots all over my spine, and a big one on my vertebrae. And it kind of went back, and we were kind of like, okay, well, it got worse and worse, and finally, one day I couldn't walk. I couldn't get out of bed. My wife called Dr. Curtin, and she suggested we... Sorry?
It's okay. This is emotional. But when you after seeing Dr. Curtin and getting this imaging, and you're a young, active man, you were found to actually have an unusual cancer spreading through your bones called multiple myeloma. Is that right? And when Todd and I talked, we both share the experience of being diagnosed with cancer at about that same age. And I know for me, it was a real shock because, healthy, I didn't do bad things, I didn't smoke, I didn't do, those kind of things.
I did.
And I was at... Yeah. It's just what I want to know is our firefighters are smoking out there.
Before the firefighting.
Oh, okay.
Before.
Yeah.
Pre-firefighting. I didn't get into firefighting until I was in my 30s, so
okay.
I was a young, stupid kid, so yeah.
But it really changes. I mean, it's a smack in the face when you found out you had cancer. What was your reaction to finding that out?
Denial.
Yeah.
Denial, just flat denial. My wife knew it, but I didn't. But that day, she called the doctor in Curtin, and she said, "That's not good. Don't even bring them up here." Not that they couldn't handle it up here, but she knew what was going on. She had seen the MRI. She knew what was happening. She just sent us right to Boise. And we went down there and went through all the tests and all that stuff, and that was when we found out that not only I had cancer all over my entire bone structure. They pulled the bone marrow out. 40% of my marrow was cancer, and it was all over my bones. And what I had done is I had crushed my T12 vertebrae. Half of it was gone, and the reason I was dealing with so much pain is because it was compressed on my nerves. So that was when I got introduced to St. Luke's pretty heavily at that point with Misty, Dr. Kreisel, Dr. Hajar, the fourth floor. Anybody from the fourth floor in Boise? Awesome. Love that place. Love all of Misty. But that was when I got introduced, and that was when the whole ride started. But yeah, it was pretty, pretty devastating to find out that at, early 40s, that I had a cancer that was eating my bones. Yeah. So it was,
So let me talk to you a little bit about some of your experiences. So you had some experiences with the healthcare system in California in for-profit setting when you had your earlier back problems. You've had experience with us, a nonprofit organization here in Idaho. How did your experiences compare?
It was, I dealt with a lot with the first back injury. I got lucky. First of all, I tried to go through the workers' comp industry in California, which is bizarre. And it was very, very odd setting. And it was just very cold, is the best way to put it. I've been trying to kind of think about how it was, but it was very clinical. It was just very, okay, you're patient A, you have problem B, and we're going to deal with it this way. And it was just very regimental, and there wasn't a lot of care involved. When St. Luke's, it was different. It was like, when I went in, everybody knew, it was like a cheers. Everybody knew my name. It was kind of funny. To the point of even the people that you have down there who take people around to the different locations when they get the different tests done, they knew me. I was the guy in the turtle shell with cancer. I had to wear a back brace because my back was broken and all that stuff. But and then when we came up here, it was like a little family here. From the first day I came in a wheelchair, and
just take all the time you need. We're not rushed.
Yeah, well, it was, it was tough, but they were really good.
It means a lot.
Yeah. Well, it was bad because it was such an emotional time.
Yeah.
And it was just, it was the care that I got was great. I said I wasn't going to do this, but I did.
Nah, it's fine. I mean,
only sports and kids, right? That's what it's supposed to be.
This is, that's the whole purpose of this. For those of us that take care of patients day in, day out, we need to be reminded every now and then of the impact these things have on patients. And so these abilities for us to connect with a patient and to understand what you're going through, it's really helpful to us, and it's reinforcing when we realize the impact of how profoundly our little touches, caring can make to somebody that's going through such a devastating illness.
Yeah, I can't remember the ladies in the front desk. I can't remember all their names, but they were always, they always remembered me, even now, today, after, what, a year and a half, almost 2 years now. I still come in and they know who I am. The nurses were incredible, every single time. Jean and Jan, they were the first ones, and they were the two infusion nurses. And, still to this day, we're friends. We're not just patient. That's why I loved being able to come up here, because it didn't have to go down to Boise. I was having to get treatment twice a week, and that would have been brutal on my wife to have to take me down to Boise every week. So coming up here was a blessing, and it was great, and it was wonderful. And I still walk in, and they still know, hey Todd, how you doing? It sucks, but I'll get through.
Well, let's talk about that for a minute, because I think what you're pointing to is a couple points. One, the importance of us, as I was mentioning before, having care close to home. And the second is the value of being part of a system. So let's just talk about that for a little bit. So you went to Boise, you had your diagnosis, your initial treatment, but your treatment involves getting chemotherapy on a protracted basis. And as you were saying, you were going to have to get treatment twice a week. And when you're going through a cancer, any cancer, but particularly one of the type that you had, there must be significant fatigue associated with that.
True, yeah.
And I think that just the added burden of making those trips is even more burdensome on somebody who's actually going through the cancer treatment than it would be if you were otherwise healthy and going to Boise for some reason.
Right, yeah, it made all the difference in the world. just even so much as financially, gas.
Right.
We were living in Cascade. It was 32 miles from here to here, there to here, which is great. At first, for the first few months, I was coming in twice a week for shots, and then I was coming in getting IVs, and now it's a much more maintainable care, so I don't have to come up as often. But if this location hadn't been here, it would have been a lot larger of a burden on my wife, especially dealing. She had two neck surgeries, so she was dealing with her own recovery. Right. And then she was dealing with mine, and we had the two kids in school, and so having to take the time to go down to Boise would have been, it's a lot longer. And how does it go down to Boise? You can't just go down there and get what you want and come back. You got to go down there and go around to 4 different locations, because you're down there and you can't, you don't get down there enough to, So coming up here is easy. Come up here is nice. Come up here, get our stuff done, and we get back, to a regular life. So it was. We've been great from the first interviews I had with the people last year. It was kind of my way. I've always, appreciated what St. Luke's has done, and this has been a really neat opportunity. I have another family member who loves Dr. Curtin as much as we do. He wanted to be here, my uncle, but he, of course couldn't. But there's been other people too that have had very positive, and not just me. So it was kind of my way of saying thank you to everybody, and to St. Luke's, and in general, of how they've, made our lives a little bit easier in all the chaos.
Well, that's great to hear. So having care available right here obviously is a huge help to you, added convenience. But it also seems to me that the relationship we have as being part of a health system meant that resources that normally couldn't be at a hospital of this size, in a community of this size, were available to you, such as Misty and Dr. Kreisel coming up here. Talk just a little bit about how that worked for you with Dr. Kreisel.
Well, it was really kind of weird, because we had just moved from California to here the year before. And it was kind of odd, because we lived in a Northern California up by Oregon. It's a little secluded area, Humboldt County. But it was weird when we moved to Idaho, which is a smaller area, of course. And it was here that I developed this odd blood cancer. And then it happened to be, Misty happens to be right there in Boise, 80 miles away. And if I had got the same thing in California, I would have been driving to Berkeley or Stanford or something crazy like that,
right.
6 hours, 7 hours away, to get the same type of care that I'm getting right here in Boise, Idaho, which is awesome. And then having that opportunity for them to come up here and get my care here was even like, wow. My mother-in-law keeps saying, you guys need to move back here, move back. And I said, no, my doctor's here. This is my doctor. I'm basically married to Dr. Kreisel, unfortunately. He doesn't realize that.
Well, Idaho law did change, so.
Yeah, just moving's out of the question, until they come up with some other way to get care. Because Misty is people who are taking care of me. So it's fortunate. It's a blessing. It's wonderful. I can't even just explain all this stuff. It's wonderful. Keep it up. Don't let this location go. Keep adding to it. And the patient care is great.
But then comes the associated financial challenges, and you had different experience in California and here. How those financial challenges were handled by the two health systems. Can you talk just briefly about that?
Yeah, in California, when I was dealing with the first injury, it was workers' comp, but there's a lot of other stuff involved. But really, it was with my wife's injury. It was done at another location, and it was, as they reminded me each time I called the billing department, is they were a fee-for-service. They were a for-profit location, and they like to remind me of that every time I called. And every time I called St. Luke's, it was, let's figure out how we can make this work. They have people that, the patient financial advocates, is that what they are? That office is awesome. And we went through all the stuff and went through all the paperwork. But basically, it boiled down to where St. Luke's looked at our situation, looked at what was happening, and they took care of it, which would have never been done at a for-profit location, as they like to remind me. So it was the burden, the financial burden, with not being able to work like I was, having trouble finding it and keeping it because of the pain, was huge. That was a huge burden that was lifted, that I didn't have to deal with. It could have been a crushing blow to have, this $80,000, $90,000, whatever it was. I don't know, that was the original numbers. They get whittled down. Right. But still, anything would have been crushing. Yeah. And it wasn't. So it was wonderful. Thank you. I appreciate that.